All right, guys, welcome back to the Pocket Mads channel. It's Maddie here, and welcome back to Meta Monday, the weekly series where we analyze the Pokemon Pocket metagame and keep you guys up to date on everything going on in the competitive world of Pokemon Pocket. This past weekend was PMPT number 17, the Crimson Qualifier. The reason we called it the Crimson Qualifier is because it's actually the last tournament of our sort of tournament season, our series season, where basically this upcoming weekend, we're actually going to be doing our invitational tournament, which is going to be sort of a reset, you know what I mean? So we've been running tournaments for the past like 3 months. We did 17 total tournaments, and we have like a series rankings, if you didn't know, which kind of keeps track of all of people's placements. They accumulate a points total, and there's like a leaderboard. So we're kind of wrapping this all up, and we're going to reset that leaderboard. And basically what this means is that this weekend is going to be the PMPT Invitational, the first ever Pocket Mads Pocket Tournament Invitational Tournament. And the top 128 players or so, everybody with 18 points or more on the leaderboard, will be invited to participate in this weekend's tournament, which means that, yes, a lot of players are not going to be able to qualify or, I guess, play in the PMPT tournament this weekend. So we're effectively taking a week off from like a normal tournament series. And the reason we're doing it this weekend is because the weekend after this weekend will be the first week that we have B2. So it's sort of this new season, a brand new metagame is likely going to be coming. So that's why we're doing it now, the last weekend of the Crimson Blaze season before we go into B2, and then things will sort of reset. So I'm just letting you know what's kind of going on right now. Again, only certain people are qualified to play in the tournament, but you guys should definitely come and tune in and watch, because this is going to be extremely exciting. This is the largest, most competitive group of all of the best Pokemon Pocket players in the entire world. That's effectively what this is. The PMPT tournament series is the largest weekly Pokemon Pocket tournament series, and everybody that's within the top 128 on the leaderboards are effectively, in my mind, the best players in the game, the most active competitive players. So it's going to be hyper competitive. It's going to be a massive, single elimination best of 5 bracket. So it's going to be really fun to watch. All of the best players in Pokemon Pocket will be competing this weekend. You're not going to want to miss it, so go ahead and make sure that you tune into the live stream. It's going to be this Sunday, January 25th. By then, we should have an announcement and basically like a full understanding of like the cards coming in B2, which is going to be exciting as well. So anyway, that's my spiel. That's what's going on this weekend. Super, super excited. However, today, we're going to be talking about the results of PMPT number 17, our tournament this past weekend. Over 500 players, so big congratulations and thank you to everybody that played in the tournament this weekend. Big shout out to all of the judges, the moderators, and the casters. Everybody that makes this happen. 17 tournaments, 17 weeks in a row is actually absolutely incredible when you think about how much goes into these tournaments. So anyway, what we typically do in the Meta Monday videos is we break down the final standings, we shout out the players, we go through all of the top performing deck lists, and then we break down all of the metagame data. So you can navigate the video in the timestamps down below, or you can just go ahead, sit back, and watch. That's how we do it. Long intro. It's been like 3 minutes. Let's just get into it. Here are the final standings of PMPT number 17 this past weekend. Here you go. Now listen, I understand completely. People are already in the comment section just typing away. Oh, Suicune and Greninja wins this week. And yeah, first place goes to Icosta from the United States. The USA actually did very, very well this weekend, so big shout out to everybody from the US of A, and of course shout out to everybody else, but this is definitely a standout weekend for the United States players. But Suicune Greninja gets first place. Icosta here 12-2 was his record. We got to talk about it, because I think that a lot of people might get discouraged by this result, right? They're going to be like, oh, okay, so yeah, it's back to Suicune and Greninja, but you got to understand, Suicune Greninja is still a very strong deck. It's not like it just disappeared. The metagame this weekend, actually, I would say, in right now as we talk, is actually incredibly balanced. I would say that the metagame balance and the distribution of quality decks is higher than it's really ever been, in recent history, right? Especially this season. So I understand Suicune Greninja get the win this week, but realistically, things were very, very balanced. In fact, if you take a look at the standings, we had 6 different decks, actually. 6 different archetypes within the top 6, so there was no duplicates here. Suicune Greninja did get first place, but that's the only Suicune and Greninja until we go all the way down into 12th place, where, of course, there's going to be a few more. So even though Suicune Greninja did get first place this weekend, things were much more balanced, and I really would not, I urge people to not overreact to this result. A lot of people are going to play this deck. It's still a strong deck. It should surprise absolutely nobody that it, won this tournament. However, Dash MD, second place from the US of A, yet again, 11-2 2-1, second place with Hydreigon or Hydreigon and Mega Absol. Now, the interesting thing about this, and I've said this so many times, and you're going to hear me say it yet again, Hydreigon just is not progressing the meta to any significant degree. I've tried to tell people this so many times. This is a deck list that will almost always lose to Suicune and has a pretty poor win rate into Suicune and Greninja. People still want to play Hydreigon because it is a powerful deck list, right? This is a quality deck. It got second place. But the thing here, and if you take a look at the standings here, because ECOS or ECOS 141 in third place was playing Magnezone and Oricorio. So what I want to do here is just take a look, right? And take a look at the matchups for Dash MD. This is the top placing Hydreigon player. Let's take a look at these matchups throughout day 2. And what do we notice here? We notice he beat Magnezone and Oricorio once, beat Magnezone and Helioisk in top 16, and then beat Magnezone and Oricorio in top 4. So the only reason Suicune didn't have to basically likely lose to Magnezone and Oricorio in the finals, and therefore getting first place, is because of Hydreigon, right? And there was also right here Hydreigon in 8th place. So, realistically, I would say, and if I was just going to say this in very layman's terms, like Hydreigon won this tournament for Suicune. Like, that is the reality. We've seen this happen time and time again. This happened like 3 weeks ago. Last week, Hydreigon did not end up, taking down the Magnezones. So Magnezone ended up winning and beating Suicune in the final. So that is really the balance. There's a lot of other decks in the metagame, like Altaria Greninja, like Dark Greninja, as we see here in 5th place. Shout out to Crimson Ruby. Shout out to Stylin. We even had a Greninja and Suicune deck right here. If we go down, we actually had some variety in top 16. We had Dragon Arcana Altaria here, Splash 16. We had, what is this? Yeah, Garchomp, Lucario 1, 2, 3 playing Magro. This is Magnezone and Helioisk. We had a standard Mega Altaria and a DD deck, PP Top in here. And from Spain in 11th place, we had Magnezone Galvantula in 13th place. So, and we even had a Blaziken down here in 17th place. So, like, realistically, what happened this weekend was that the Hydreigons kind of just got the best of Magnezones. They ended up, pairing up into the bracket and kind of knocking them down a peg. So if it really wasn't for those couple of Hydreigon players that made it really far into the bracket, Suicune probably wouldn't have won, because that's the reality of the metagame right now. Is Suicune Greninja is incredibly strong. It beats most things, but it does lose to Magnezone or Oricorio. So it was either going to be Magnezone or Oricorio winning or Suicune and Greninja winning, just because Hydreigon's typically not able to get over Suicune. It has that potential, like theoretically, in grand finals, Dash MD could have won. It's just a really tough matchup, and realistically, Suicune's going to win that more times than not. So that's the story. That's I guess what's been happening the last 2 or 3 weeks this season. A lot of people playing Suicune and Greninja. Magnezone or Oricorio being very, very prominent, being one of the best counterplays to Suicune and Greninja, but loses to Hydreigon. So again, I'm just going to tell people outright. I mean, there's literally no benefit to playing Hydreigon other than the fact that if you do pair into Magnezone or Oricorios, you're going to be able to beat them. Like, that is sort of the one upside to playing this deck list. So I don't want to discourage any people for playing any different decks, but just keep in mind the reason Suicune won this weekend realistically did come down to the fact that Hydreigon blazed that path for the Suicune player, and that's what's going on. That's what Hydreigon does. So if you're upset about Suicune and Greninja winning this weekend, just blame Hydreigon, because that's what's happening in these top cut brackets. But anyway, big shout out to all these players here. And again, if we go down, a lot more diversity and realistically a lot of different decks. Like I said, DJ Martinel here, Blaziken in 17th place. We did have Mega Altaria and Giratina here, Froggy X and Njord, I don't know how to say the name, from France. 23rd place, another Blaziken in 25th place, Decidueye here in 28th place, and then what else? Was that kind of it? There was a Jolteon in 44th place, but yeah, the metagame here is definitely going to be condensed to whatever decks people are playing, which I think there is a good bit of diversity. I think there's probably about, 7 or 8 decks that people are playing, right? I mean, you have Suicune Greninja, you have Hydreigon, Magnezone, Oricorio, Altaria Greninja, Dark Greninja, Greninja Suicune, you have Magro, you have Dragon Arcana, you have Blaziken, you have Decidueye. So there's a lot of different decks that people are playing, but they really are well known already. Like, there's nothing sort of new popping up, and that's to be expected this late in the season. So, again, big shout out to all of these players here. This is the results of this weekend's tournament. Will Suicune win the Invitational tournament? Probably. I mean, when you take a look at the decks that people are likely going to choose to play at the Invitational, a lot of people are likely going to choose to play Suicune because it is such a strong deck list. So, that's the big story here right now. I think if you take a look at the top 4, it kind of tells you everything you need to know. We have Altaria Greninja, Suicune Greninja, Hydreigon, and Magnezone or Oricorio. Those are sort of the significant players right now in the way that the brackets lined up. Suicune beat Mega Altaria, Hydreigon beat Magnezone, Suicune beat Hydreigon. So, it's just how the bracket turns out. Don't be surprised by it. Don't be discouraged by it. Realistically, there's a lot more non-Suicune here in top 16 than there is Suicune. So that, is a signification of a pretty healthy, balanced metagame. Even though, none of these decks are necessarily that new. But there's a lot of diversity. I mean, like I said, how many decks were in top 16? Like different decks, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 different decks in top 16. I mean, that's good diversity if you ask me, realistically. It's just people I know are going to overreact because Suicune got first place. And there's always going to be that like sticker shock, right? I guess is like the term for it. People will always overreact to whatever deck gets first place, but they don't really look deeper into the metagame data, which we will do later in this video. Anyway, let's dive into the deck list. Let's take a look at this Icosta's first place Suicune and Greninja deck list and just sort of see what's going on here. I don't think we're going to be too surprised. No, I'm not really surprised. Very standard Suicune and Greninja. We are playing one Frogadier. So, people ask me all the time, and it's a big, topic of like, should we be playing the middle evolution? Is it good into Chingling? I just think that playing the middle evolution in Suicune Greninja is never bad. We're playing 2 Froakie and 3 Greninjas. So playing 1 Frogadier with 2 Rare Candy does make the deck a little bit more consistent in general, right? And one of the biggest reasons why Suicune and Greninja is so strong is because it has Greninja, right? You kind of rely on getting Greninja out to put a lot of pressure, whether that is Greninja EX or Greninja with Water Shuriken. This is still one of the best decks in the entire game. I think, though, if we take a look at the metagame data at the end of this video, you'll see that Suicune Greninja probably struggled a lot more than you might think, right? So I know I got first place, but its win rate and its averages performances are actually probably quite low, just because there is a lot of balance in the metagame. Still playing a DD, double Cyrus, 1 Irida, 1 Mars, 1 Giant Cape. I've seen some people swap this Frogadier for like sometimes, a second Giant Cape or something like that, but this is a very standard run-of-the-mill Suicune and Greninja deck list. At this point, I think we do need to realize that Suicune and Greninja is likely the best deck of all time. But I think that right now, actually, which is ironic because, again, it did get first place. I think realistically, guys, I would say that Suicune and Greninja at the current moment right now is as bad of a choice as it really ever has been, which, it sounds counterproductive because it got first place. But again, when we take a look at the metagame data and the results at the end of this video, you'll probably see what I'm talking about. But anyway, big shout out to Icosta. Next up here is going to be Dash MD. This is the top placing Hydreigon deck, second place here in the tournament. And actually a little bit different. This is kind of a spicy version of Hydreigon, which again is playing 1 copy of Xylos, not playing any Chingling, not playing any Leap over Absol, not playing any Furfrou or anything like that. We're playing 1 Nihilego and 2 Poison Barbs. So this is going to be sort of a different version of this deck list. A kind of a spicy version, I would say. I mean, how many people right now are kind of playing Hydreigon like this, right? If you were to sort of guess the top, the 20 card list for the top Hydreigon deck from this tournament, is this what you would expect? That's what I'm asking you. Like, probably not, right? Would you expect the Nihilego Poison Barb? Probably not. But it does, do a lot of good things. Like, it's a lot of extra damage. And the cool thing about this deck list is that its primary attacking option is a single prize Pokemon. So there's a lot of times where after your Hydreigon goes down, the game is going to go 2 or 3, maybe 4 more turns. That's a lot of poison damage, right? So this is a deck that punishes your opponent for KOing that single prize Pokemon. It's actually taking advantage of that fact that Hydreigon is only worth 1 point, only worth 1 prize. So that's pretty unique. And I do like this. Nihilego and Hydreigon, these are Pokemon that can get over Oricorio very easily. Realistically, if we need a lead Nihilego, it's not like the greatest thing in the world, but it's really not that bad because we can just attach a Poison Barb and maybe just finish the game with double Hydreigons, right? It's going to buy some time here. Still playing 1 Sabrina, 1 Cyrus, which I do love, 2 Copycat, 2 Research. So the deck is going to have some consistency. And that's where we're at, I think, in Pokemon Pocket is a lot of these decks that, in the past would really struggle from a consistency standpoint are a lot more consistent these days just because you can play double Research, double Copycat, double Pokeball, right? It does make your deck that much more consistent. This deck did lose to Suicune in Grand Finals. You can watch that match over on Jay Dankist's, our caster's YouTube channel, if you want to go back and watch that. We also have the entire stream VOD on the YouTube channel. I heard some people commenting about like the decision making in the Grand Finals, things like that. It is what it is, right? I mean, Pokemon Pocket, it's very easy to lose games. That's the reality of it. But at the end of the day, Hydreigon is going to struggle into Suicune and Greninja. That's quite frankly just the reality of the matchup. But a big shout out to Dash MD, a very unique Hydreigon deck, a very interesting version of one of the most popular archetypes so far this entire season. And I don't know if we're really going to see Hydreigon really disappear. I think it is sort of the premier single prize archetype right now, aside from Magnezone or Oricorio, but they're very different decks, right? And Mega Absol here still finding its way into relevant decks. However, the reality of Mega Absol is that it does just get carried by Hydreigon, and Hydreigon gets carried just by the high roll potential of it, right? The turn 2 going first, 130 damage. Hydreigon's a very powerful card, but it isn't going to be the most consistent thing in the game, right? especially since, you know, we have Mega Absol and Indeedee and Nihilego, which are cards we don't really ever want in the active, realistically. The one Xylos, though, is going to protect you from Chingling. It's an interesting deck, you know, a very interesting, divergent, you know, deck list for Hydreigon. Maybe that's becoming the popular deck list right now. Maybe I'm just behind. I don't play Hydreigon, so I don't really know what the trend is, but we'll see how that, you know, progresses moving forward. ECOS 141 from the United States here. Third place, Magnezone Oricorio. This is the highest placing Magnezone Oricorio deck, and yet again, there's not going to be any surprises here. So I think most people playing Magnezone Oricorio are going to be playing it like this. And again, this is a definitely a buffed archetype this season. One of the best decks, honestly. Like, its average win rate is phenomenal. It's got great matchup spreads here. The only downside to this deck list is that a lot of people still play Hydreigon, which again, it's like, you know, why do people play Hydreigon? I don't really know. In ranked, I don't mind it, right? Because it's a very simple deck. It's pretty aggressive, pretty fast paced. I don't think it's a bad choice in ranked, but in tournament play, like, I just don't. You're always going to run into Suicunes, you know, like, and it's just going to be an uphill battle. So I don't really understand it from a tournament play perspective, but Magnezone Oricorio, very, very strong. This is a deck that's been buffed by, you know, the 50 HP Magnemite, the new Mirror Shot Magnezone, Clement as well. We can utilize Lycia. So I love this combo. A lot of consistency cards in this deck. One Copycat, one Clement, one Lycia, two Professor's Research. So 4 cards in the deck are drawing cards basically for us every single time we play them, which is really great. We even have a red card, Cyrus, PCL, you know, double Giant Cape. This is a really quality deck list. And I think that as far as Oricorio decks go, this is probably the best Oricorio deck we've had in a very long time. In Magnezone Oricorio, you know, we talked a lot about Suicune and Greninja and its relevancies for so long, but Magnezone Oricorio, to some degree, even though the deck list has changed a ton over the last few months, has been relevant for a very long time. Like, I don't think people understand how long Magnezone Oricorio has been, you know, a factor and has been winning tournaments. It's been a very, very, very consistent deck for a very long time. Purely single prize archetype with Oricorio. Bit of a slow roll deck. Now it's got extra RNG, extra consistency. It's honestly a very, very impressive deck. Magnezone with Giant Cape has 170 HP. It's kind of crazy. This is not like a bad deck whatsoever. So, you know, no surprise here that we get one here in third place, but shout out to ECOS. Next up, Crimson Ruby from the United States, 10-3, playing Altaria Greninja. And this actually might have been the most played deck this weekend, or maybe tied with Suicune and Greninja. I think a lot of people are kind of swapping off Suicune and Greninja to play a bit more of a high roll, high potential version of it. You know, Suicune and Greninja is very consistent. Mega Altaria and Greninja is like a little bit less consistent. It's just a bit more awkward. But the upside to this deck is that you can play Chingling, right? So it's kind of the new progression, I suppose, of Greninja, at least in the last season or two, has been, you know, Dark Greninja and Altaria Greninja. These are Greninja decks that play Chingling, you know, so instead of sort of being a Greninja deck and getting countered by Chingling, we have both options here. We have Sing, Swablu. Mega Altaria is potentially the best attacking Pokemon in the entire game, and for my money, the best Mega Pokemon. But again, this is a deck list that's a little bit awkward sometimes. It's just, we all know that this deck can brick heavily, but if it does not brick and it draws the cards it wants to, it's very, very difficult to win. You got to understand, like, turn 2 going second, 130, Mega Altaria, plus 20 with Greninja and Cyrus in hand is absolutely unbeatable. It's so difficult to win if they get that, you know, that start up here. What's interesting about this deck list, now that I look at it, is that we're actually playing 1 Rare Candy and 1 Frogadier, which again, does seem a little bit strange to me. Most decks just play 2 Froakie, 2 Greninja, and 2 Rare Candy, so they've actually swapped that, maybe to get around opposing Chinglings a little bit easier. So definitely interesting. You know, it's an interesting idea for sure moving forward. Next season, will we get counterplay to Greninja? Will we? Because that is really what defines the metagame, realistically, you know, is Cyrus Greninja. Like, that's the combo that I think, if you can utilize that in any deck list, you're going to have an advantage. So unless we see some specific counterplay or a card that really counters Greninja specifically next set, next expansion, you know, we're going to see a repeat, right? I mean, unless something else comes out that's just inherently really strong, Greninja is going to dominate. It's going to be very popular because that strategy does just win games. It's just a very good strategy. So shout out to Crimson Ruby. 5th place here, we've got Stylin from Thailand, 11-1, by the way. So, you know, realistically, from like a win rate perspective, the best matchup, actually, I think the best win rate in the entire tournament. 11-1, because first place here, Costa went 12-2, but from a win rate, like, percentage perspective, 11-1 is actually a better win rate. So very impressive, 11-1, and this is Dark Greninja. So, Dark Greninja is an interesting deck. It's a very interesting deck list. Yet again, a deck that just sort of lacks consistency to some degree. It's a bit of a slower deck, but, if this Chingling can really put down the damage, and if it can really kind of set in that item lock, this is a deck that can benefit from it very, very dramatically, right? So, Chingling here to item lock, Greninja pings, we have Darkrai ping damage as well, and then Mega Absol to discard supporter cards. So it's kind of a slow burn deck. If your opponent doesn't kind of break through this Chingling item lock somewhat early in the game, you're probably going to have enough potential and I guess pressure to kind of continue on and just end up winning the game. It's a very control type deck. I call this like high roll control is what I like to call this, because it is a high roll deck with Rare Candy Greninja, but with Mega Absol, with Chingling, it's a very, very control based archetype, and it's very cool deck list. Something that I think is really fun to play. Its win rates over the last few weeks have been pretty low, so this is a deck list that I haven't really considered to be, a real meta contender, but 11-1, this one player absolutely popped off. So big shout out to them. Here's the deck list here: double Cyrus, double Greninja, double Research, double Copycat, double Pokeball, double Rare Candy. So it's, it's playing just a lot of double, two ofs in the deck, right? One Rare Candy, one Rocky Helmet, one red card. I do like the deck. It's a fun deck to play. The strategy is sound, but again, consistency problems, right? Like leading Darkrai, bad. Not getting Chingling out, bad. Like leading Mega Absol going first, bad. So there's just a lot of like downsides to this deck, especially, in a format where a lot of decks are going to be very fast paced and very like explosive. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where we're at there. But anyway, in 6th place, we have IMO CR7 from nowhere. I guess he didn't list his location. 10-2, and this is going to be Greninja Suicune, which is a different deck list than Suicune and Greninja. I try to tell people it plays very differently. Like having double Greninja EX does make the deck a lot different. I still think that this is a good deck list, and you got to understand, if they do release a card, like a card that protects the Pokemon from the bench or something, like if they release something that does hard counter Water Shuriken, Suicune and Greninja can just play it like this, and this is still going to be a quality deck. I don't think this deck is nearly as good just across the board as double Water Shuriken, but this is a deck that's still playing double Cyrus. In fact, we're actually playing only one Copycat and one Research, one Irida. So a bit more reliant on drawing cards with Suicune, but the big upside to this deck list is that we have flexibility for where we're attaching energies, and that's a big deal when we're going first. Suicune can tank a hit, and then we can kind of build up, Froakie, evolve it into Greninja EX, shifting Stream into the active, and then all of a sudden we're sort of not behind, right? It's a deck list that is a lot more consistent off the starting line, but less powerful as the game goes on. I really like this deck. Not much else to say about it. It's been around for quite some time, and getting, what is it here, 6th place, which is pretty cool. Let's go down to 9th place. Let's take a look at Splash 16 from Colombia. And this is going to be, I believe, Dragon Arcana, which, is a legitimate meta archetype in the game right now, playing one of the Spiteful Dance Oricorio, which I do really like. This is a deck that plays only Psychic Energies, but we are playing double Pichu, one Man-type, which can generate lightning energies, can generate water energies, so we can get the dual energy requirement to use the Dragon Arcana attack onto the non-EX Altaria. It's a very aggressive Pokemon, 120 HP, 100 damage. This really is, I would say, the replacement of like what Silvally sort of was in previous seasons. I think that this, this Altaria is a really strong card, and since we can play one Mega Altaria, it kind of just makes sense. We're still playing Sing Swablu. We have got the Spiteful Dance Oricorio, so theoretically you can go Altaria, or if Pichu gets KO'd, you can go Oricorio and hit for, what is it, like 80 damage, and then if Oricorio goes down, maybe we go into Mega Altaria, so it just adds another line, right? We're not reliant necessarily on drawing, the specific Altaria that we need to. We can utilize Oricorio to maybe take a KO. So this is not a bad card. Similar to Marshadow from like Mythical Island, and I think there might be other examples of that as well, but this is not a bad card. One Sabrina, one Cyrus, double Lissia, a lot of 50 or lower HP Pokemon in the deck. Lissia does make this deck a lot better. Even one Pokeball as well, double Copycat, one Sabrina Cyrus, one Mars, one Giant Cape, one Pokemon Communications as well, which is, I think, kind of a forgotten card. Mainly because we have Copycat and we have May, right? So May is sort of a supporter card buffed version of Pokemon Communications, but this is an item card, and it's not a bad card whatsoever. So kind of underrated to see this card in the game. Oftentimes, like mid to late game, you're going to have a lot of different Pokemon in your hand, and sometimes you have that Mega Altaria in the deck list still, so you can just swap it out and have a pretty high chance of getting the particular Pokemon that you want. It's not a bad card. It's a bit of an underrated card, I think. Pokemon Pocket, you're limited to 20 cards in your deck, which is difficult because there's a lot of good cards you can play. I think that if we were to see, 25, 30 card deck lists in Pokemon Pocket, things like Pokemon Communications would see a lot more play. That's just my opinion, but a very fun deck, very aggressive deck, single prize archetype deck. sort of something that has never really caught on in terms of like being super popular, but I really think that this is like a legitimate meta contender, and it's a bit more creative. You know, it's fun when you see this deck do well because it's like, okay, you know, this is something a little bit different. I've even seen people tech an Oricorio into this deck list, which is pretty fun. So yeah, anyway, shout out to Splash16. Next up is going to be Garchomp Lucario 1, 2, 3. 10th place, he was playing Magro, and by Magro we mean Magnezone and Helioisk here with the Clement package. This is a very aggressive deck. They are playing one Oricorio and only one Helioisk, so they're not really going all in on the aggro Helioisk stuff, but pretty interesting. In fact, this is actually, well, now that I look at it, it's not really like true Magro, because we're playing Volt Charge Magneton. We're not playing the you know, the other one, the Spark one, right? And we're not playing you know, 2 Clement's backpack. We're only playing 1, so it is really just a flex. It's kind of a combination of typical Magnezone Oricorio with just sort of Helioisk thrown in there, which I do think is pretty cool. So gives you an excuse to play double Clement in the deck, and you know, it's going to be a little bit more of an aggressive option. And the thing is, Helioisk does 120 damage, and that's actually 140 if we have Clement's backpack, right? So you know, it's a Pokemon that can hit for a lot of damage, which against Suicune and Greninja is going to be pretty relevant. You know, one hit KOing a Cape Suicune is a pretty big deal. So I like this deck list. You know what I mean? There is some flexibility. We have other lightning type cards in the game that kind of fit well into the Magnezone package. In fact, we're going to skip ahead real quick, but big shout out to this deck list. It's very, very cool, kind of a flex deck. We're going to skip forward, and we're actually going to take a look here at Tigo's deck. Tigo from Portugal, 13th place. This is a Magnezone Oricorio deck, but instead of that Helioisk, like, it's playing Galvantulin. We saw this in previous weeks. So we are seeing a little bit of flexibility and a little bit of progression for Magnezone Oricorio. There are other lightning type Pokemon that are strong that you have access to. And this is a really fun deck. You know, again, not necessarily super reliant on the Oricorio stuff, but with Elemental Switch, with Magneton, with Volt Charge, and Galvantula, we can actually paralyze our opponent like turn after turn after turn. So it's really cool. You know, like the paralysis lock into Mega Pokemon is a viable win condition because, you know, paralysis is very useful. But the thing with Galvantula is if you KO a Pokemon and the game doesn't end, then you're going to just get KO'd, right? Because they're just going to bring in a Pokemon that's no longer paralyzed. So it's like an interesting strategy, but against Mega Pokemon that are worth 3 prizes, like the paralysis lock, you know, turn after turn after turn, sometimes up to 3 turns in a row is going to lead to dealing 210 damage, which is oftentimes enough to KO Mega Pokemon. So it's actually a really fun strategy, very underrated. I think Galvantula has kind of been like a fringe meta deck or fringe meta Pokemon for like months and months. This card is not that new. It's pretty old actually, but it fits well into Magnezone Oricorio, and I really do like this deck. So, you know, big shout out to him. We got to go back a little bit because we missed out on PP Toppin's deck from Spain, 11th place. He was playing you know, more traditional Altaria, which I do think is a good deck list. Honestly, I think a lot of people like the progression of Altaria has been strange because, again, people have sort of dropped this version of Altaria and they've dropped the standard Suicune deck to kind of meet in the middle and play Greninja Altaria, which again is sort of becoming one of the most popular decks in the entire game. So it's interesting because this Altaria deck is very consistent. Like, it's a very non-high rolly deck. It's a very consistent deck list, and Suicune and Greninja very consistent as well. So it's interesting that people are kind of moving off of these more consistent versions of Altaria and Suicune to play, you know, a high roll combination version, which, you know, I think it speaks a lot about the progression and just sort of the state of the metagame right now. A lot of people would play something with high upside, at least in tournament play. In ranked battles, I still love this deck, just like I still love standard Suicune and Greninja to some degree. But yeah, you know, nothing really too surprising here. We are playing 1 Giovanni instead of 1 red, you know, 1 PCL in the deck, 1 Mars, 1 Cyrus, 1 Sabrina, 1 Giant Cape, 1 Pokeball, double Lycia. So it's a fun deck and it's a quality deck list. We still have the Chinglings. We've got the Star Drop Jirachi for bench damage, the Baby Altaria specifically for the Magnezone Oricorio matchup, although as we sort of realized it, I think last season, and people might have forgotten, but when you're playing the non-EX Altaria, in this deck list specifically, it does not help you into the Oricorio matchup, unfortunately. It adds like a 3% or whatever to your win rate. So I'm not knocking it, I'm just saying that, you know, typically you would play that Altaria to have a better chance of beating Magnezone Oricorio, but if you take a look at the win rate data, this is a deck list that no matter what is not going to do well into Magnezone Oricorio. Like, that's just the reality of it. Unfortunately, that Altaria specifically has 100 HP and is weak to lightning, so you're always going to get 1-hit KO revenge to buy the Magneton, and then after that you're basically just reliant on Sabrina. It just doesn't really work out that well, like, unfortunately. You know, that's just the reality of it. So yeah, you know, shout out to this deck list. It's definitely a consistent deck, but it's going to struggle into Magnezone Oricorio, just like it always has. The last deck we're going to take a look at here is going to be Blaziken. This is DJ Marnell in 17th place, the highest placing Blaziken deck of the tournament. I think Blaziken did well, actually, from a win rate perspective. Still not that many people playing Blaziken, but I do think that this is a good deck list. So again, going to be pretty standard. Yeah, like nothing jumps out to me here. 1 Sabrina, 1 Cyrus, We have one Furfrou, one of the Tongue Whip, Heatmore. This is kind of just what people are playing right now for Blaziken, right? One Lily, one Rocky Helmet, one Flame Patch, and then one Combuskin, right? With double rare candy. So to get around Chingling a little bit, Furfrou to counter Chingling, Heatmore for the bench damage, Cyrus win condition. You know, Lily is a win condition here. You know, double copycat, double research. Consistent. This is not a bad deck list. I think that as far as fire type decks go, Blaziken really is sort of the premier deck list. It's a very straightforward deck, and I think straightforward decks really aren't that bad. You know, there's sometimes where you play Blaziken and you're like, wow, like I never had really the chance to win. Like this, it's just a strong card. But sometimes when you're playing Blaziken, you just don't draw. You just don't draw the cards, and then you lose, you know, and that's the downside, unfortunately, to Mega Blaziken. So it actually traditionally has a pretty good matchup into, you know, Altaria decks and into Suicune decks. You know, it doesn't have like phenomenal win rates into anything, but has very respectable win rates in a lot of the most popular meta decks. So here's a really great example of Blaziken, and if I were to play Blaziken, this is literally the exact deck that I would play, these 20 cards. So I really like it. Anyway, that's it. That's all of the deck lists here to wrap up this video. We're 30 minutes in, so I got to hurry up here. But what we're going to do here quickly is take a look at the metagame data, and this is going to give us like an actual understanding of what happened this weekend. And the results only, you know, the final standings only show us a little bit, right? It's not the full story. So the metagame data here, if you made it this far in the video, shout out to you. But this is where we're really going to break down what actually happened this weekend here. So here's the metagame tab. Hydreigon here was actually the most played deck this weekend, which is absolutely crazy. Like, again, like what are we doing? I just don't fully understand it. You know, shout out to Hydreigon. But 49% win rate, 174, 174, 7 ties. So effectively 50-50 here, but did not do that well. The second most played deck was Suicune and Greninja at 11, just about a 12% you know, meta share as well. Basically the exact same amount of people played it as Hydreigon. I went 169 to 171 with 6 ties. So again, about 50-50, but you know, below a 50% win rate technically. Which again, you know, the lowest win rate and kind of meta share that we've seen for quite some time for Suicune. I tried to tell people, yes, I got first place, but it's really not like dominating the metagame like you think it is. It's just a decent player, you know? And I mean, when 12% of the tournament plays Suicune and Greninja, we can't be surprised if it wins. Magnezone or Koryu, actually the third most played deck this weekend. However, it struggled, and I think we all understand why, Magnezone or Koryu struggled this weekend, having to play against, Hydreigon and Magnezone so much. It was literally the most played deck, you know, which does make sense because Magnezone or Koryu won last week. So I think people were kind of thinking, well, you know, if a lot of people are going to be playing it this week, we should probably play the deck that's good against it, Hydreigon. And it did get second place, but again, you know, you're going to lose to Suicune more often than not. So unfortunately, Magnezone or Koryu here kind of knocked off its pedestal just slightly here, 116, 124. Not a horrible win rate, but definitely struggled a little bit, right, for sure. Mega Altaria and Greninja, actually very impressive performance this weekend, 8% of the meta share. This was, in fact, the most successful deck this weekend. Altaria continues to be one of the most consistent, impressive Pokemon in the entire game. 149 to 112 is the win rate here, 55, almost 56%. A far cry from all of these other win rates here at the top of the meta shares. And honestly, it probably just comes down to the fact that there was a lot of Suicune Greninja, a lot of Hydreigon. And this is a deck list that, you know, can beat all of those deck lists, right? So it's kind of crazy when you think about it. But that's where it's at right now. This was a weirdly defined metagame this weekend by Hydreigon, and that's why we see, you know, Suicune beating it in grand finals. That's why we see Magnezone or Koryu struggling, and that's why we see Mega Altaria Greninja doing well, because Altaria kind of just beats Hydreigon in most scenarios, especially with Greninja. If you get that at Greninja online, it's going to be tough. Mega Altaria and Giratina here, only 5.5% of the meta share, but again, about a 50% win rate. You know, this is a very respectable deck list. It is. I think that this is a deck that, you know, is very similarly positioned right now this season, or currently right now this season, as Hydreigon and Suicune. It's just a very powerful deck, you know, not necessarily like counter meta to anything. Like, its position is really defined by its own consistency and strength. So, I mean, this is just a quality deck list. It's not going to jump out to you with its performance this weekend. Again, about 50%, just like really all of these other decks, but a very respectable deck, and it is, in my mind, a real factor in the metagame. Decidueye struggling, 4% of the meta share, 44 and 75 is like absolutely abysmal. But, you know, so many decks are not Suicune. And you know, the reason why you play Decidueye in the season right now is mainly just to beat Suicune. So, you know, only 12% of the tournament was Suicune. Everything else seeing play right now is probably just going to beat Decidueye. And that's, you know, that doesn't feel very good if you're the Decidueye player, you know what I mean? Yeah, so, you know, Decidueye definitely struggled here. Standard Mega Altaria, 67 and 59. So, you know, a great outing for Altaria. Again, I really think Altaria kind of is the strongest Pokemon in the entire game right now. So standard Standard Altaria did pretty well. Blaziken, again, about 50-50, 55 and 57, so, respectable, but only 4% of the mana share. Charizard, 40%, as it always is. Charizard's been at 40% win rate for basically since the Pokemon Pocket released. Any version of Charizard is always like 40 to 45% win rate. It's just general high roll, and I think that there's just not a real reason to play Charizard right now. Greninja, Dark Greninja here, 34-32, so again, literally about a 50% win rate, 2.5% meta share. Jolteon here struggled quite a bit. Venusaur struggled quite a bit. In fact, Suicune and Gyarados actually struggling. It's a small sample, only 7 and 16, so like only 6 people played it, but it didn't do that well this weekend. Crobat, a nice little standout. We talked about this on Friday. I think Crobat's a very respectable deck list right now. And then Magnezone, Magro actually doing pretty well, which is pretty cool. These are small sample sizes, so nothing to really jump out here at us, I suppose. We can filter by win rate to see anything like it's like a big standout. These are all like one-ups that did well here. Greninja Suicune did really well. 19 and 10 is respectable. Dragon Arcana, 18 and 11 is respectable, and Magro. So these are like, 3 deck lists that aren't really considered to be like real meta contenders, but, performed well this weekend, which is impressive. Let's take a look at the day 2 conversion rates before we wrap this up here. So Hydreigon did have a little bit of a boost in a day 2 conversion rate here, up to 18%. So it did do well in day 1, and it as well as did actually pretty well in day 2, 25 and 17. But I think that realistically, the most played decks, typically, unless they really struggle, don't have negative conversion rates. That's just sort of how the math works. So Hydreigon, it did actually perform pretty admirably this entire weekend. But Suicune and Greninja, look at this, 65% win rate, 23 and 12. So the most popular deck in day 2 was Hydreigon, and it kind of just fed Suicune and Greninja. Like, we can take a look at its matchup spreads against Hydreigon this tournament. It was 20 and 15. So, I mean, it's not actually that bad, I guess, if we're being honest with you. It's only a 52.3. Well, I guess that equates to ties. But 20 and 15 is the real record, which, is a winning matchup. A pretty substantial winning matchup, honestly, in Hydreigon. It's really not a great matchup for Hydreigon, I will say. But yeah, Suicune dominated in day 2. It's just the result of the meta share in the decks that saw play. Altaria Greninja here, 19 and 13, so a decent performance. Even Magnezone went 11 and 8, pretty respectable in day 2. Altaria 8 and 7. Mega Altaria and Giratina did struggle in day 2, and we've actually seen this from time to time. This is a deck list that, again, thrives off its consistency, but when you get into day 2, you're playing against, a handful of decks. Like, the metagame becomes much more condensed. This is a deck list here that beats non-quality decks. Like, anything that's not in like the top 3 or top 4 decks in the game, it's probably just going to lose to Mega Altaria and Giratina because it's just really strong and consistent. But a lot of the top decks, like the Greninja decks, actually end up beating it. So this is not a big surprise to me. Very, very good in ranked from just an average win rate perspective. But once you get into tournaments, like day 2 in the brackets are really difficult for Mega Altaria and Giratina. Blaziken 8 and 6, not too bad. Charizard 2 and 3. So nothing really stands out to me in terms of like the conversion rates. Like, the only thing that really stood out to me is Hydreigon, which had a pretty dominant performance in day 1. But again, lost to Suicune in the finals, right? That's the reality of it. That's what happened, and that's the story of this weekend. So keep in mind, guys, there will not be an open tournament for you guys to play, at least a PMPT tournament this weekend. I guarantee you there's going to be other tournaments to play, so definitely go check them out. Check out Limitless, and if you're not going to participate in the tournament this weekend, definitely watch the live streams, because it's going to be a great time. It's going to be super competitive, and it is really like the championship for the Pokemon Pocket tournament scene, which is really fun. It's going to be a really fun time, so I'm excited for the Invitational. Comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. Again, I understand Suicune and Greninja getting first place this weekend, but a very, very diverse metagame. If you take a look at the standings here, lots of different decks, very spread out. Not one deck is really dominating in any facet, which is interesting. Again, the metagame is pretty figured out, but I think that I really would say that we have about 7, 8, 9 decks that are all quality and are contending to win these tournaments, which is cool. And again, we have about a week left until everything changes basically forever with B2, which it will, trust me. We're going to get a massive metagame shift. But for now, guys, this is the metagame. This is what we're looking at. Comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay tuned for everything that we've got coming here on the channel. Stay tuned for the Invitational Tournament. And stay tuned for the B2 announcement, which we will cover here, which we'll be releasing very, very shortly. All right, guys, let's wrap up the video. Thanks for watching Meta Monday. Peace out. Have a good one. We'll see you guys later. And yeah. Bye.